And Neversoft at the time was trying to show Activision what their engine could do. When I started talking to them, they were working on a game with Bruce Willis in it. What was it? Apocalypse? Yeah, Apocalypse. As part of them showing how flexible that engine tech was, they had Bruce Willis running around and they could pull up, some geometry in a level and make a little half pipe. And they were like, if you can imagine, we could totally make this work. They had, there's a bowling alley across the street from the Neversoft office at the time. And that bowling alley had Top Skater, the arcade game, in it. And Joel, the guy who was the president of Neversoft, was really set on making this racing skateboarding game. But they didn't have anybody that knew about skateboarding. And so they wanted someone on the team who knew something about skateboarding. I skateboarded as a kid. I've been a fan of it. Much better student of it than I am actually partaking in skating. They wanted a designer who knew skating so that we could come in and do stuff like introduce new modes, make sure it was all feeling legitimate, bring in like brands and talk about stuff like the skaters and everything else.
So you were the authenticity supervisor to a certain extent.
Yeah, to an extent.
So when you first come onto the project, what state is the design in? What direction was it going in? And how did you coming onto the project change that?
It was a racing game. There were these big rings that you could jump through. The physics were really rudimentary. There was nothing like balancing on rails or grinds or anything like that. It was very much like they were trying to rapidly clone Top Skater. I think at the time there were probably like 8 people working on the project. I came on and I was either 8 or 9. Mick West, who was the lead programmer, was one of the owners of Neversoft, talking a lot to him about balance and how things work and how we can make this fun. The special meter stuff was all influenced by like Mortal Kombat, and hidden fatalities and things like that. They knew they wanted to do some signature moves with characters and stuff, so we came up with the special meter and the hidden tricks and all that kind of stuff, and really kind of dialed in a lot of what they were missing so that it wasn't just you on a board rolling around. We really started feeling like we had something when we added just a few key things, like balancing on rails, a couple of skills that weren't there at the time.
You said you're a skater yourself, and as a skater coming onto this project, what was the first thing that you thought that the build was missing that you wanted to immediately implement?
Right away, the first thing I noticed was they were just starting to get into what grinding and rail slides and things. In actual skating, those are, it's not a roadblock, but it's definitely kind of a wall that you can hit. Like, you're going to ride around, you're going to learn how to ollie, and a lot of that stuff is very accessible. When you decide you want to try to, ride a handrail or do a rail slide or something, it's a different kind of balance and it's a different kind of commitment to it. And in the game at the time, all you had to do was jump up in the air, and if you were close to any kind of edge or ledge that they had marked, you would automatically just kind of snap over to it. You didn't have to press a button, you didn't have to do anything. And then you just would sit on that thing until you went to the end. It didn't feel right. That was kind of the thing that I was brought on board to do, was to point out, like, this could be so much more. But the biggest factor is balance. When you're in the process of building something, sometimes it's difficult to see the end result, to continue to see that light at the end of the tunnel. A lot of artists will tell you, like, this drawing looks like crap until it's finished or until I redo it 16 times or whatever the case may be. And the same thing goes for video games, because they're rough, they're buggy, they're nothing that you would want anyone to pick up because they'll get the wrong impression. But in a pretty short period of time after I had gotten there, and even right away when I got there, you could see the promise. You could see what this could be. And so we changed some levels to open stuff up. We did some balancing on the rails. We added some new tricks. We made the signature tricks have little Mortal Kombat-like fatality kind of button combos to make them happen. And all of it just clicked immediately. And everyone on the team, that early on in development, this is the first third of making the game, knew right away, this is going to be really fun. And if anybody picks this up, they're really going to enjoy it. I don't remember when we actually got the deal to put it on the Jam Pack. I think Activision sent a demo to Sony, and it was, that's kind of how the Jam Pack used to work. And they loved it, and they put it on this Jam Pack, which at the time was a demo disc that I think you could either buy it. It came with a magazine. All of a sudden, Activision was getting flooded with calls, and everybody was talking about this demo, this Jam Pack demo. Like, I have never played anything like this. This is so great. It had just enough creativity involved in it. Like, we're just going to give you a piece of this warehouse with some, blocks and objects and obstacles and a pool. And here's a small set of tricks. And 50 people are going to go in there and play it 50 totally different ways, which was awesome. That was key. And that was when we knew we had something, because the buzz was everywhere at that point. I mean, it's a unique experience. I'm very lucky to have been involved in something that was so popular and so fun, because, a lot of people work their whole career and they make really fun, cool stuff. But that was a mega hit, and it's really cool to have been involved in that.
And it was only the beginning as well, which is the craziest thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The moveset in Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 was so much larger than that in the first game. It was expanded greatly. How did that impact the way levels were designed?
It changed a lot. A lot of the moves that came on in 2, we wanted in the first one, and we just didn't have time to get all that stuff in there, or we didn't have time to make them work the way we wanted to. So we basically looked at every aspect and said, okay, we've got another year. What are we going to change about here's the list of everything that we did in Tony Hawk 1, and we're going to go down the entire list and make everything better. And we added things like the manual so that your combos could be longer. We added the front side, back side stuff where we would change the way the tricks work depending on how you did them. That was the one I think we added nollies and stuff as well, where you'd shift your feet up to the front of the board, and that was a whole new way to do a set of tricks. And that was basically, how do we make scoring better? And the people that really wanted to dial into scores and stuff could take off with that, and they'd routinely start getting million-point scores and blowing everything out of the water. But yeah, it was a lot of what we already had wanted to do. And we had been talking about it, between the two games, and we knew it was like a perfect trick to link two areas together. Well, how do we want it to work? And I think we only tried like 2 things before we decided on the up-down or the down-up to make it happen. And that worked out really well, and it was kind of done.
After 2, the next 2 games, 3 and 4, come out right after each other as annualized releases. And by 4, it seemed like, at least from Neversoft's perspective, that the formula had kind of been played out, and that really changed in Underground, where things are expanded and made more open, and the story mode. And I'm just wondering, why was Underground so different?
The way it basically went was, after 2, Activision obviously knew we want one of these things out every year, and it was going to get harder and harder for us to do that whole list of everything in the game and make it all better. So we had to try to focus on 1 or 2 aspects that would really make each version the unique thing, because the tricks are going to be, for the most part, the same. A lot of the new stuff that we add in terms of tricks and scoring and stuff, it's all going to be subtlety, and it's not going to be as impactful quite, as like the manual or something like that. I mean, there were still a couple tricks that we had, like reverts. That was a big deal, so we could keep combos going in half pipes and stuff. I think at the end of the day, there were 11 or 12 of us on the original Tony Hawk team. Tony Hawk 2, there were like 14 of us. And Tony Hawk 3, there were like 60, or 70 people. Yeah, so the teams kind of came together and merged, added a whole bunch of people. We moved into a new building, and everything was just blown up. Well, Activision came along after 4 and flat out said, hey, this game's way too hard, and we need to get back to something else for the 5th one, which was going to be Underground. And now that we had the engine going on PlayStation 2 for a couple versions of the game now, we decided that it was going to be a story mode. That was going to be the big thing for Thug. That first level had a race car in it that you could ride around in and stuff. And it was really, really difficult and compact, and it was clearly not made for a car to be driving around in. Well, of course, that was one of the things that Activision latched onto. They're like, oh, wow, yeah, we love that you can jump in and out of vehicles. Like, the game just feels like it's getting so much bigger. So for Thug 2, one of the first directives that they came in, I remember a meeting where Joel had sat down and Activision had told him, like, you need to have everybody build their levels with a specific vehicle in mind. What are you going to have? What's your vehicle? What's your level going to be? Where is it? And what's your vehicle? It started kind of growing out of control, I think, at that point. I built the Australia level for Thug 2, which is primarily like Bondi Beach. And then I think they had me put in like an Aborigine guy on a go-kart or a Segway. I forget what he was riding. It was ridiculous. It was totally ridiculous. Boston was the one with the Segway, and it was like rocket-powered Segway that Jesse James, this guy who had a reality TV show, he would ride, and it was just absurd. Like, this stuff has nothing to do with skateboarding. Like, so during Thug 2, one of my partners, Steve Gannum, he and I had been talking and decided we were gonna go start our own company and everything else. And that's when we had left. During 2, we were key components to the team, so they were our first contract, and we kept working on it remotely. But after that point, we kind of had stepped out of any real ability to direct, where this project was going or what we were doing, and we just kind of worked on the stuff that they wanted us to do.
So it had kind of become its own monster at that point.
Yeah, for sure. So there's the saying, it jumped the shark, and for me, I felt that way starting with the first Underground. There was a lot of stuff in there that was really cool. I did like having a story. I really liked all that stuff where you could kind of work your way through it, in a way that made sense and it was fun. But then with 2, it started getting crazy. But yeah, all these little things just started to grow wings and take off in their own directions, and a lot of it was just getting weird.